Hello and welcome back to another episode for Project Seed Money. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited to be joined here today with author AM. Thank you so much for being here and just spending a little bit of time with us. I'm excited to dig into this.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's just jump right in. How did you get started writing, and did you always want to be a writer?
Oddly enough, I did not always want to be a writer. I was not at all a writer. My sister was a writer, but I was not. I am a 20-year military veteran. I retired from the United States Air Force back in 2008, and my last assignment was extremely stressful. And I subsequently spent about 3 years sitting on the couch reading. And I've always been a reader. Huge reader from a very young age. My parents were readers, so I was very fortunate there. But I got to the point where I was reading so much that I was running out of material to read that I wanted to read. And that was right in the era when Kindle was starting to come out in 2009. I broke both my wrists and I couldn't hold a book. Yes. Yes, it was terrible. My poor husband, he fulfilled every single one of his vows very nicely. I am so lucky there. So I'm on Kindle and I'm running out of things to read back then. And I was reading a military bromance, except for it was quite obvious that the author had never, ever met a military person. She hadn't even used, he or she, I don't know which, hadn't even bothered to use Google to figure out where military bases actually were. I mean, it was awful. And I thought, I can do better than this. Newsflash, I couldn't. It took me years of writing before I could get good enough to publish. So I actually wrote 8 novels before I published anything.
Oh my
But I
goodness.
was retired and I
So
had the
you were
time.
just so you were just writing and writing and writing, but nothing was going to the publication side of
Right,
things?
right.
So what was the catalyst? What brought you from having 8 stories to now having published works in the world?
The biggest thing was I found an online writing community. Back then, Twitter was big. Right now, I avoid it. But there was a writing community on Sunday mornings called Just Add Tea. And I met a couple of authors, indie authors. Actually, one of them I think is hybrid. Lou Cadell is a huge post-apocalyptic writer, and Eric Knight is fantasy. And they were the ones who said, you have all this writing. I've seen your writing. Publish it. They also were so kind to me, giving me tons of advice. But the best advice they gave me was to make sure I had 3 books ready to publish before I published the first one, since I was writing genre fiction, in a series.
That's
And it,
actually really good advice because I think as a reader, like I want the next book so fast. And you read it like, especially in the fiction space, like I could read a book a day easily read a book a day. And so then if I read your whole book in one day and you tell me, oh, years, I might lose interest, right? I might just shelf it and lose interest. So that's incredible. And then how did you end up self-publishing or going the traditional route? What was your publishing journey like?
I started out through the traditional submission process. After I wrote those initial 8 novels, by the way, they were all military romantic suspense, which I didn't actually realize back then. It was only recently that I went back and I've revised them and published them. But it took that long before I came up with my idea for my space opera. And when I wrote that first novel, I sent it out for submission and got nothing. And I got a little frustrated, but my friends were like, just self-publish, it's so easy. And they gave me tons of great information on, cover artists and all that. Back when there weren't really that many out there, but that was really helpful. So having that writing community was absolutely key.
It sounds like it. It sounds like they were the what was the motivating force behind actually making this dream come to reality.
Absolutely. They were, I would urge any writer out there to find your writing community. One of those people I've never met in person. You know, And it doesn't matter anymore, right? You can communicate with people across the world. You don't have to meet them in person anymore. But I do know plenty of writers who use their local library, for example, to find writers groups, or even a bookstore, some bookstores.
That's such good advice because I agree. And the writing process itself is such a solitary process, but when you can have communities of people that understand that, they understand what it feels like, they understand the critical self-talk, and they know how to balance that and help out and kind of be encouraging and supportive. I think that is key, like you're saying. So when you did finally decide to go ahead and self-publish, did you face any self-doubt?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, I face self-doubt. Again, my writing friends, and I will give another shout out to my sister who read my first awful novel like 5 or 6 times, who gave me tons of great advice. But my writing friends and Julia were absolutely critical to me having the nerve to hit that publish button. But it was really, really hard that first time to do that.
Oh,
So hard.
I can imagine. Did it get any easier with your subsequent novels?
It did, actually. It got easier and then it got harder again. It's one of those ironic things that for a while when you get excited about it and your fingers are flying. And for me, I come from a tech background. So writing was really, really, really weird for me. At times, it's more like my fingers are actually writing more than my brain. My brain shuts off. It's the weirdest sensation. But as I've gotten to be a better writer, I've gotten more self-critical as I write, and I find it harder and harder to shut that little, negativity off in my brain. It's I my next space opera novel is way overdue because I can't get past shutting off that little thing in my head. And there were some other stuff that went in there too, but I did publish a couple of novels in between, so yeah. I wasn't silent, but
Do you have any practices that you use that help you with the critical self-talk? Like, do you have anything that, like, even mantras or like how, because you obviously do keep doing it, right? Maybe even if you're not on the timeline that you want to be on, you're still facing the fear, you're still facing the critical self-talk, and you're still navigating that. So, do you have any practices that you use?
I take my dogs for a walk every morning by myself, and oftentimes during that walk, I will be self-talking to myself. You can do this. You are a creative person. You have this ability. You've done it tons of times before. This is not that hard. Those kinds of things. Try to stay on the positive, of course, because that works better. We all know that. You know, I have found that walking, or even better, is hiking. If there's a little bit more moderate exercise, a little bit more making your heart work a little bit harder, tends to turn off the negative thoughts and allows me to think creatively.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I need that too sometimes, just like a little reset to get your mind going back on the right track. And I love that you're reminding yourself, like, I've done this before. It's not that I haven't done this before. I can keep doing this. And I think that that is such an interesting thing that we imagine as authors, maybe even as first time authors, that it's going to get easier. And in some ways it does. In some ways it does,
It,
especially if you're self publishing. The processes, that's going to be easy. You already know how to handle KDP. You already know about all of these little minute details. So some things do get easier. I do feel that the challenge always tends to be in our mind more than anywhere else there is. So
Absolutely.
I agree. After you published your books then, and after you published each of your books, did you face any type of fear when it came out? Like now this is out in the world. Was there a different sense of fear that came with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Every time I publish, it's always, are people going to like this? Are they going to think it's good? My ratings are very good on almost all my books. There's some people who don't like them, and that's fine. Not every book is for every writer. And my books are not for every reader, not writer. Yeah. But the people who like them really like them. And yet I have a horrible time with self-promotion. You know, the idea of doing ads drives me insane because I have such a hard time getting over that imposter syndrome. And I shouldn't, but I do.
That's just the reality though. And I think that that's so important because It is so challenging on social media to see who's really feeling fear and self-doubt because the picture that we want to put out into the world comes from a place of perfectionism. We want to look a certain way, we want to be a certain way. And so if that's not coming across, it's hard to do that. But when we see other people doing it, it's easy to assume that they are feeling so confident. And most likely they're not. Most likely they're feeling just as much self-doubt and just as much imposter syndrome, but somehow they had just enough confidence to like hit publish, right?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, and it really doesn't get any easier. I know so many authors who are far more monetarily successful than I am who still struggle with that doubt every
So how do
day.
we do it? How do we do it then? Because you still have to keep doing it.
Right. I think a lot of it really is self-talk. It helps to have a community, even an online community is awesome. I'm really fortunate that my sister is also a writer. So that really helps having family who's supportive. But if you don't have family who's supportive, there are people out there. You can find people to join in with the writing community who will, even if they don't need. My current writing community, we write in a Pomodoro method every day, well, every weekday, and none of them write the same thing I do. None of them. But that's okay because we can all commiserate on our shared experience and how hard it is, and especially imposter syndrome. We all have it, every single one of us. So,
Yes. No, and that's just something that we don't get away from, and I think that that's why I think it's so important to share that we all experience that and that you
mhm,
don't you don't really get to get rid of that, but you do
mhm.
develop these strategies and these tools along the way to kind of keep pushing yourself forward. And just to reiterate, you mentioned the Pomodoro method, and I just want to tell the authors who are listening what that is because that is such an ADD hack. For me, it's such an ADD hack. I have a little kitchen timer by my desk. And anytime I have to do things I loathe, I set this timer. It just changes the whole game. So,
It
do you
does.
mind explaining your process with the Pomodoro method?
Sure. For us, for my little writing group, we meet every day in my time frame. It's 10 till 1, and we chat for a little tiny bit, and then we'll sprint write for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. And sometimes not everybody's writing, somebody's editing, or somebody is, revising, or somebody's doing ads or admin. The admin never stops. But most of us use this 10 to 1 time, or most of them are 9 to noon, actually, because they're on the Pacific Coast. Most of us use that time as writing time. And I think that's the other thing that can help you overcome that imposter syndrome is just, sitting in the chair and making yourself write, whether you want to or not. Maybe you don't write what's on your work in progress. Maybe you write a short story. Maybe you write something completely unrelated, flash fiction, anything. You just got to use that time that you have set aside to write. And maybe you don't have time, from 10 to 1 like I do because you're not retired. So you take that 10 minutes you have in the morning or before you go to bed and you write.
So beautiful. Thank you so much because I think that when we have some sort of a disciplined practice, we know from research that when we set down and we have this time and we have these things that our mind much more easily goes into that creative space because we're primed for it. So we know that it works.
Exactly. If we have a schedule and we stick to it, it works.
And I love that you don't have to use the time necessarily for writing because like you said, there's so many other tasks. And for me as an author, the administrative side of it is like something I loathe. Like I truly, truly loathe. But every week I do, website maintenance for 20 minutes and email, those types of things. And that's what I use my timer for because it's like I can look at it and say, okay, you only have a few minutes left of this.
Yes. We've been talking about this in particular when it comes to writing newsletters. A lot of us have 2 or 3 newsletters to write. And, if you have a timer and you say, I can only have these 25 minutes to get this newsletter done, somehow you almost always make it work.
Yes. Yes, it's such a hack. It's such a hack. And so I love and specifically the Pomodoro method is like 25 minutes, 5-minute break. For me, I just say like if it's a task I hate, I'll literally give myself 5 minutes or 10 minutes because I don't want to be sitting there for 25 minutes. I have to bribe myself a little bit, right? Especially with the newsletters. I don't know why, but I really try to be consistent with that, but it is one of those tasks that I just think like, yeah, so if you do have those things, if you can sit down and you can give yourself a set time, that will definitely help you get into the flow state. And it does help with
Yes.
negative self-talk. And I love what you're saying about your community too. That's really neat that you have a group that meets every weekday like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And like I said, I'm fortunate, I'm retired. So a lot of the other folks are full-time writers. So that's why we're able to meet in the middle of the day. But you can go on BlueSky and find a sprint at almost any time of the day now. Yeah, I've been on BlueSky and I'll see a writing hashtag, sprint time or something like that. Writing time.
Oh,
Just
cool. What is
yeah.
Blue Sky?
Oh, Blue Sky's a new social media app. It tends to be a little more on the liberal side. So if your politics or otherwise, try Twitter. Either way, both of those, you're very, very likely to find a sprint group that's just sprinting out of nowhere. If you're a gamer, Discord often has threads. Threads now often has writing communities too, where people will just be sprinting. Hey, I'm going to sprint for the next 20 minutes. Come join me.
Oh, I love that idea. And the writing community, I will say, I've done other careers, I've had other paths in my life, and the writing community, in my opinion, is the most welcoming. They're so welcoming because we all have to do this thing by ourselves. So
Yes.
when you get to have the community together, everybody is so warm and supportive and they understand. So it's the best place to find that support, in my opinion.
I agree. It's very supportive. And it really doesn't matter what your background is, where you came from, what you believe, any of that. We're all writers. And so, we all get along for the most part.
I love that so much. I have loved this interview. I've loved our time together. This has been so helpful for me. Even I feel like I've learned a few things. Like I didn't know these social medias even existed. So thank you for that. I will ask, do you have any last piece of advice that you can give our audience or even just encouragement on their writing journey?
One of the things I always encourage new writers to look at is a guy named David Gogerin. He's Irish. He does author services, but he is not looking for clients. And he has a course called Starting from Zero. It's completely free. He's not trying to sell you anything. So I always tell new writers, go there and then find your community online somewhere, whatever social media platform on, no matter, there is a writing community out there. Find those people.
Thank you so much. Can you please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your books and, your website, those types of things?
I have a website called amscottwrites.com. You can find my space opera science fiction. You can find my military romantic suspense. And you can find my latest novel, which is urban fantasy. Yeah, I know, it's weird. I have a very odd combination. All of those are on AM Scott Writes. I'm also very active on Instagram. And those are actually separated between A.M. Scott and my romantic suspense is published as Anne M. Scott, Anne with an E. So, I do separate those there. I'm also on Facebook and Threads and Blue Sky, but Instagram is where I tend to be more active than anything. Although I will admit I am terrible about posting book things. I post a ton about Montana and my dogs.
I love that. The dogs need their spot too.
Yeah. The other thing I post a lot about is I'm a volunteer for Team Rubicon Disaster Response. So I post a lot about that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for spending so much time with us today and giving us your wisdom. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it in turn.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode for Project Seed Money. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I will see you with another interview next week. Bye.